right. I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome, of course, to our little session here where we're going to talk about creating neuro-affirming workplace wellness. I hope you guys are excited to have this conversation. It is one that is really close to my heart and also close to the heart of my co-host, Mel Hauser. So I'm excited to have you joining us here. And we are excited to spend the next, 30 minutes talking about this really, really important topic. So welcome. Please, Mel, will you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. So I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns. I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong Vermont. We're a nonprofit in Vermont, in the United States, supporting people with all types of brains. I'm a family physician, so we support people through healthcare here, but we also have social connection programs and do workplace trainings around neurodiversity and inclusion.
Awesome. And I will formally introduce myself. My name is Becca Lory Hector, and I am an openly autistic DEIB facilitator, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Because one thing that I have really been in search of my entire life is belonging, and I would really like to find it and or create it. So that is what I'm about. And oh, we have more people joining us. Yay. Okay. And I'm really excited to share with you guys today the topic that's really close to my heart, which is workplace wellness. In addition to the workplace wellness stuff that I do and the DEIB stuff, I am also an autistic quality of life researcher and an author. So I'm excited to bring to you guys my experience today. Let's begin with the topic at hand, shall we? Let's talk about what it is that we're here to do and talk about, which is workplace wellness. What is it, right? So I kind of pulled together a little definition, and I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wrote myself a set of notes because there were things in here I wanted to make sure that I said, and that I wanted to make sure I included. So workplace wellness is something that we don't talk about a lot, but it's something we should be talking about more often. Right? It refers to the programs, policies, and practices that are implemented by a company or in a company to promote the health and well-being of their employees, right? Excuse me. That means that they do a wide range of kind of items, I want to say, because there's really no way else to categorize them, to improve the physical, mental, and emotional health of their employees. They do things, includes items like your health screenings and assessments, your health insurance, items like any fitness programs they may offer, right? Mental health services that may be on board, items like flexible work arrangements, health education and awareness. And this one is kind of oddball, but I love it. Ergonomics fits in there. So the concept of making sure that your office space, your office environment, right, that you fit in it and it fits around you, right? So I love that one. But those are kind of the big core items that we talk about within workplace wellness. And now I'm going to throw it over to Mel to talk about the other half of what it is that we're going to talk about today, which is neuro-inclusion. Mel?
Sure. So, I think that there are many organizations that have been doing really good work in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging domain. And neurodiversity and access are often missing from those conversations, right? So when we think about creating workplace environments where people with all types of brains can get their needs met and thrive, this isn't about like a list of things to do. It's more like a lens through which to see the world. It's about recognizing that we all have different brains and different brains have different needs. And so how do we create workplace environments so that regardless of how someone's mind or their brain works, they can do their best work? And so that's the lens that I'm bringing to this conversation today. I think that when we think about workplace wellness, this lens is often also not part of those conversations, right? So you can have, the gym membership and you can have the, whatever. But your workplace does not recognize that you have a set of access needs. We all have access needs being anything that anyone needs for full and meaningful participation in whatever they're doing. If you have a set of needs and your environment is not meeting those needs, that will not lead to wellness, right? It's going to lead to the opposite of wellness. And we have so many people whose society, is sending the message explicitly or implicitly that there's one right way to do the thing. And when those messages are given and are part of culture, and this starts in, it starts in early childhood, it starts in schools, and it's just reinforced over the lifespan, really. And
Yeah.
so again, anytime there is one way to do the thing, there's going to be a whole lot of people whose access needs are not met. So this is about offering things in multiple different ways, and we call that universal design.
Thank you for introducing that. Because that's the whole idea, right? What I love about universal design is that the goal of it is that those things are innately part of your environment, right? That you don't get there and then need to add on or take away from your environment to make it suit you. It's that those options already exist. And what that says to the world is it normalizes that we don't all experience reality the same way, right? That we all have different experiences of our shared spaces, and that it shouldn't be that we have to do extra things, right? Just to be able to use a space, right? And shared spaces include our workplaces, right? Those are certainly part of those spaces. So what we want to talk about today is kind of talk about a little bit why neuro-inclusion is an important part of workplace wellness, right? And Mel's starting to talk a little bit about that, right? Because you're starting to allude, right, to the fact that if we don't have the things we need, we don't feel good, right? And it's such a basic equation. And I want to say it like I'm a little kid, because that's how I feel about it sometimes. Like it's such a basic need, right? That's how we should say it to me, right? So why do I think it's important for me, right? It was an area that I decided to focus on, like, and in this journey for belonging, I kind of look at all the different pieces of the workplace that I think we need to talk about in terms of disability or neuro-inclusion, right? And to me, we talk about access, we talk about accessibility, we talk about accommodations, but we don't talk about this workplace wellness piece, this component where equity isn't easy to find. And so it's important that if you are doing a workplace wellness initiative at your corporation or company or organization, right, that you think about the neuro-inclusive piece of this, right? Because we are different. And so the things we need from our workplace wellness packages are different, right? What we want from them are different. And so we need to be thinking about that, the workplace wellness piece through a neuro-inclusive lens, right? So why is it important to me, right? Well, when I see that workplace wellness includes neuro-inclusion, I really feel like they're getting a better understanding of what diversity truly is, right? Left out of that conversation often, disability, and especially non-apparent disabilities, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes even in the setting of really good intentions, when the conversation becomes, what do I do extra or different for that group of people over there? That's important, and it's not inclusion, right? So anytime there's a default way, and then we have like that group over there, that group is othered. And so universal design would say, by offering things in multiple different ways, giving people freedom and choice to pick the strategy that works for them, that is going to be that none of those things are the default. It's just we offer things in multiple different ways. And so when we think about the way in which, or the ways in which neurodiversity plays out in the workplace, I mean, it's everything. It's your brain, right? It's literally everything you do. So from the physical and cognitive demands, the tasks of what you do, when you do it, in what order you do it, what you pay attention to, different things of the environment. Like I used to work in an environment that had overhead fluorescent lights. I didn't know anything about my brain at the time when I worked there, but like I was exhausted by the end of the day. So just thinking about the impact of the environment, the impact of other people. interactions, task division, just all of the nuances of communication when we have different people whose minds work in all kinds of ways who communicate differently. Yep. Becca,
I
you're
was
muted. There you
muted.
go.
Sorry about that. I think what's really interesting about this piece for me, and the thing that it brings up for me, is just how outdated our strategies for the workplace are. Truly outdated. Like we really, this concept of sameness that you're talking about, this idea that we should all do our work the same way and the same hours and need the same thing from our workplaces and do the same amount of productivity and all of these different things, that the sameness, and sometimes even, for lack of a better way to say it, wearing uniforms to work, right? The requirement of what is needed to wear to the office, right? That we should all wear the same thing and be able to wear the same thing, right? That dress code hierarchy, which is just fantastic. But that piece, right, that sameness came from industrialization. It came from the idea that we should be, human assembly lines. Right. But that's not the truth of how human beings are. That's not the reality. Our reality is that each and every one of us is different from the one next to us. And so where did this sameness, this need for sameness come from? And certainly we're in the technology age. Why haven't we updated our workplace standards?
Absolutely. I see a comment in the chat from Isabel that, what we're talking about here benefits everyone, not only neurodivergent individuals. And it doesn't just benefit all employees, it also benefits employers, because when people have their needs met, they do better work. And when people have their needs met, they're less likely to quit their jobs. All right, so the economic benefit to people not quitting their jobs, and think about all that goes into turnover, having to hire new people, train new people, all that stuff. If you have people who have their needs met, they stay and they do good work. Muted.
I have to stop muting myself. I am
Yeah,
in such
just
the
stay
habit of
unmuted.
muting myself in between. But yeah, I think absolutely. It also fosters, to me, it fosters like a culture that I want to be a part of. Like it fosters a company culture for me that feels true to where I want to stay. And that in and of itself fosters longevity for your employees. It means people are going to stay. If you like where you're working, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not running away. If you're happy with where you're working and all of those things, that's the key to it. So why aren't we really focusing on things from that perspective now? All right.
Absolutely.
So with that conversation behind us, let's talk a little bit about some strategies for neuro-affirming workplace wellness, right? So let's talk about a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, the elements of neuro-inclusive workplace, kind of a big picture overview for us, Mo.
I'm gonna do the same thing and stop muting myself. Yeah, I also have the kind of brain that is just shifted and hyper focused on the chat. I guess folks are trying to put private messages in the chat, but or public message in the chat, and I guess that's not working for some reason. So yeah, if folks have questions, just pick one of us and send questions that way, and we'll read them out and respond to them. I'm sorry the other chat feature is not working. So anyway. What I would say is that, like, big picture is that we know there are some trends or some best practices around neuro-inclusive employment. In fact, my organization, All Brains Belong, we have a neuro-inclusive employer bright spotting program where local folks can nominate employers who are creating workplace environments for people with all types of brains to get their needs met and thrive. And turns out amongst the organizations recognized through that program, what they tell us they do, it really does match what the literature shows on neuro-inclusive employment. And so things like universal design, offering things in multiple different ways, things like having flexibility in routines. When we think about the different aspects of how people get their work done, it's the physical environment, communication, culture,
Right.
autonomy, Like there's so many things that that contribute toward, I think, Becca, like what you're saying, this culture built around, this is the kind of place where we want people to get their needs met.
Right. Absolutely. And so what does that, to me, what does that mean though, right? That's my, okay, great, right? Great concept. But what does that mean in its meat and potatoes? What does that mean for us in terms of how we function as a business? And that plays out in our policies and practices, right? That's how we end up kind of putting this all together and kind of showing it in action, right? Is when we start to create inclusive policies and practices, right? And that means that has to include, right, our workplace wellness packages. What are we offering in our workplace wellness initiatives, right? In terms of flexibility, in terms of what, different kind of modes and methods for people to be getting availability, right? Accessibility needs, is that being addressed? Accommodations, are they being addressed, right, in your workplace wellness package? And even the way you're presenting the materials and how people get to it, is that easily accessible, right? So what we want to be doing is sort of promoting policies that really support neurodivergent and disabled employees, right? Things like flexible working hours, our clear communication practices, right? And those kinds of items.
Yeah, if I could also add to that, I think it's really important, when we think about, a broad range of people with disabilities, people with chronic illness, just to go look, like when viewed through an equity lens of who gets to show up, when possible, to really be thinking about multiple ways of participating. So if depending on the nature of the work, if the work does not necessarily need to be done in this one way, in this one location. And of course, there are some types of work that do need to be delivered in person in this particular environment. Not all jobs can be done by all people in all settings. And there are a lot of people being required to do work in a way that is arbitrary. Unfortunately, from an equity lens of who gets to show up, there are people who cannot show up because it's not safe for them to show up for a variety of reasons. When we think about, all of the different ways in which people are marginalized and othered, related to race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, like all the isms, right? This is so the intersection of those aspects of identity, the disability, the health safety part of that also plays into this. And so when it's not safe for them to be in an environment that doesn't have safe air to breathe, for example, we are still in the middle of a pandemic, and neurodivergent people are at increased risk of complications from COVID, including long COVID. And so that's also an important piece of this that I wanted to name. In my medical practice, 97% of the autistic and ADHD adult patients in our practice, 97% have neuroimmune conditions that make it very unsafe for them to get COVID, let alone get COVID repeatedly. And they are having to choose between health and the rest of life.
This leads me right into something that I just am chomping at the bit to talk about, which is remote work, right? This to me is I don't know, it is tantamount to me in terms of workplace flexibility, right? This to me is the representation of the kind of ableism that we see rampant in our workplaces. People don't understand that, you can, try to make a workplace as, inclusive as you want, but most of the time you're going to have competing needs and that someone is going to be uncomfortable. And the cheapest, most efficient way to allow someone to be comfortable is to allow them to work remotely and be in control of their environment. Right? That's it. It's the easiest solve, right? To be like, okay, you know what? You can do your work remotely and then you can control your environment, right? Okay, great. Disability folks, disabled folks, we figured that out a really long time ago, right? And we've been asking for it as an accommodation since pre-pandemic times. However, it was not afforded to us. right? We were constantly denied it as an accommodation because it wasn't reasonable, because that's not how they've always done it, and we weren't special, right? And so, right, we were denied that equity. And now here we are post-pandemic, and we are all reaping the benefits of remote work, right? And yet people are still demanding return to the office. But that's how effective an environmental adjustment is, right? Remote work, boop.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's sort of the big take, I guess. And I want to talk about how it is we go about fixing this situation. How do we go about solving some of these problems? How do we go about beginning that? And so I think right now, the most effective for me, the most effective way for us to get any of these things done is really to educate and train people properly within our companies. And I think that should be a mandated and necessary part of any workplace wellness package. It's part of that awareness and health education, right? Is giving people the things that they need. And so that means giving them that information and getting it from the right sources. That is incredibly important. It really makes for the beginnings of the conversations that we really need to be having.
Absolutely. I'm just going to read in the chat. Jack shares, nothing short of a sociocultural paradigm shift. That's exactly right. This is a paradigm shift. This is about recognizing that we all have different brains and different needs have different brains have different needs. So you have to have this kind of flexibility. And we have to be looking at the match between someone's needs and the work that they are, endeavoring to complete, and that they have the support to be able to do that. Yes. And so, Becca, you mentioned education and training. Can you talk a little bit about the type of trainings that you offer?
Absolutely, it would be my pleasure. So some of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of the trainings that I offer that are kind of in this lens are things like creating a truly inclusive company culture, right? We want everyone to sort of understand, right, what it's like to be a part of a truly inclusive company culture and what it takes to do that. That's sort of what I teach. Some other things I do: disability in the workplace, navigating autism and neurodiversity in the workplace, disability and workplace wellness. I talk about it very specifically. And last and most importantly, I talk a lot about understanding stigma, bias, and ableism at work. What about you, Mel?
I love that. My trainings for workplaces start with this foundation of neurodiversity and access. So this is like, we're not talking about something specific for a particular group of people. This is, how do we look at some of the common ways in which brains differ, like really foundational level, how do brains work, right? So thinking about things like executive functioning and motor planning and sequencing and sensory processing, communication, conflicting access needs, these kind of foundational concepts. And then folks can come back and have like customized experiences where we're, figuring out how do we come to understand how, given teams, needs within a team, and how do we negotiate these kinds of conflicting access needs?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic. I think between the two of us, we've got people covered, right? We certainly both talk about this, and I think that's what really drew us together, wanting to even do this little conversation, is that we really are talking about really similar things, and that's how important that topic is. So I thank you guys so much for joining us today. I think there are a few things that we would both like to share with you. First, I hope that you guys take away from today the importance of workplace wellness itself, but also creating really, specific neuro-inclusive workplace wellness initiatives. I just want to share with you some ways that you can possibly connect with me. Of course, I shared my links in chat for you, lots of ways to connect with me there. And then you are welcome to reach out to me via my website to book me for June for Autistic Pride Day, for July, which is Disability Pride Month, or for October for National Disability Employment Awareness Month. If you book me for July and October, I'll give you a little discount. I've also got a course out there for autistic adults that's coming out in June for self-study, as well as my book, Always Bring Your Sunglasses, which is out now. What have you got coming up, Mel?
Awesome. What I've got is that I've got a lawnmower outside my window. I have the kind of brain for whom it is now difficult to think. Really, you can't make this stuff up. Anyway, things I want to invite you to. So just got in the chat. In addition to All Brains Belongs, neuro-inclusive employment trainings, I put a link in for our free training resources. We have like a robust digital resource library from the past 2 years worth of free community education on employment. So we have a free program every Tuesday called Brain Club about everyday brain life topics, and once a month is something about employment. And so all the recordings from that are all available for free on our website. I also put a link to a webinar I've got coming up in 2 weeks related to neuro-inclusive healthcare, practical ways, not just that clinicians can adapt healthcare delivery, but also things that patients can ask for.
Fantastic. And so with that, you guys, I hope you learned some things today. I hope you took some notes. I know Mel and I are both excited and happy to answer questions and excited to work with you guys if this is a topic that is of interest. We certainly will. And with that, I will tell you to please connect with me via social media, because I use my social media to share free resources. So a lot of my posts are education in themselves, as well as to find me either on Facebook or LinkedIn in my group Neurodiversity Newsstand, which is a great group if you're looking to keep up with what's going on in the neurodiversity community.
So thanks, everyone. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And you guys have a great rest of your day. We appreciate you joining us.